right, well, we are at 9:03, so I figure we can go ahead and get started. We've got a pretty good quorum here. Thanks everybody for joining. So hopefully this 9 o'clock time works better for everybody. I know Tiffany, with you being in Central Time, I'm sure it's at least a little easier, not quite as early for you.
Yes.
Good. So I think we'll go ahead and continue to keep this time here in the future. And I forgot, I'm going to, oh, Patty, you've already started recording. Thank you.
No problem.
So last time, Tina Stamper at CAMC presented on IPOCs and what the DNV cited them on, and then some of the corrective actions they took. She had a presentation that was sent out to this group. So if you don't have that, we can always resend that, put that back at the top of your email. But I wasn't able to attend, but I know that was a informative session for a lot of people. So I want to make sure everybody has that or has a chance to see that.
Please resend, yes.
Okay. We will do that, no problem. And Tina's not on this morning, but obviously we can get her connected to you, Brant, if you need to, and I'm sure she'd be more than willing to go over some of those findings again.
Okay.
Right. And I know I was asking a little bit about the Oracle Cerner Health Conference. Patty and I were able to attend that, go to some of the sessions, see some of our clients, some of the folks that attend the roundtables in person. We also hosted a breakfast Wednesday morning, a chili breakfast, which was the 4 days in Kansas City that were bitterly cold, and then got up to 80 again as soon as we left. But still, we held a breakfast and were able to meet Tiffany, you, and some others that we hadn't had a chance to meet yet. So thanks everybody that came out and carved out some time for that. I was trying to go through and see which of our roundtable attendees did some presentations. And so we had a couple people, and Tiffany's not on this morning, but Tiffany Cross from Covenant Health. She did 3 different sessions that she was a part of. And then some of our other roundtable attendees, they either attended the conference, like Northside, Concord, North Kansas City, but then we also had other hospitals who had others who did some sessions there. So I'll put those in some notes and send those out that way. You know, I know you can go and look at the presentations yourself, but if you want to see what Centra did, or you want to see what CAMC did, I know, Jen, I'm sure you could help connect us to Laura or Tabitha on some of those pieces, or maybe you are involved on some of those as well. So hopefully just create some better connections there.
Hey, I'm so sorry. I had a phone call and I heard my name.
Oh no, I was just saying that we had some of the hospitals that are part of the roundtable, like Centra. I saw that Laura and Tabitha did a session on creating hospital-wide operational awareness to promoting flow. And I just said that I'll send that out with the notes so people can see which of our attendees had hospitals that were part of that. So if people are more curious beyond what's in their presentation, maybe you can help connect them with those folks.
Oh, absolutely. We go way back.
Okay, great. Thank you. One thing that I did notice come out of the health conference, and I haven't had a chance to look into it very much. Holly Ellison from Concord's going to join in a little bit. She may ask about it as well. There's a new advanced dashboard that was released, and I don't know if anybody has seen that or has additional information, but it looks to be a pretty powerful tool in order to be able to understand what nurses are doing throughout their day, where their time is spent, and potentially help identify areas of efficiency. So I'm going to try and gather some more information on that, and I'll send that out to the group. I think that could be something that is useful to us. Has anybody else heard of that?
Within Lights On, or
What's the name of it?
was that with? Yeah, what was that in? What tool?
So it's called Advanced Dashboard, and I'll be honest, I tried to find somebody up on the gallery floor, And I think I walked the whole gallery floor at least twice and was handed off to 7 different people from Cerner, and nobody quite knew where it was. So I am trying to go figure out exactly what that tool is, but I
It's called
believe
Cerner
it is within
Advance.
Lights
I
On
have it.
Advance. And so it's
Yeah.
a new dashboard that's out there.
Within
Did they
lights
say that?
on, the advanced views within lights on, it sounds like maybe.
It is, yeah. But I don't know if that's released yet, or, you know, there's 100 different layers within Lights On. So I'm trying to go figure out where that is. The only place I actually saw it was they talked about it on the keynote. And so I kind of listened in and it piqued my interest there. So I'm going to go see if I can
What
get a
did they
little more
show you?
information on what that is.
Did you see like where and what time throughout their nurse's shift they were doing what specifically, like a graph? Because I've seen that in individual nurses advance.
It looks like it more breaks it down. Well, honestly, it was just a single slide that I saw of that. So I don't know how much is created versus what's sort of the evolution of what they think it's going to look like. So like I said, I'll need to get some more information, but I didn't know if anybody else had heard about it, but it sounds like from your questions, it's definitely worth me going to investigate that a little bit more.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
we started to do a little bit of sessions with Sonia here in Canada with my CI team, and looking at lights on, and she used the term advanced a few times. So it's not like we clicked sort of in a different place. We didn't realize it was something separate, I guess. It was just, quote, all part of lights on for us, but she did refer to it as advanced. So I'm wondering if that's what it is. But yeah, if you can find out more information about what you're referring to and see if it's the same thing, that might be very helpful.
I
Okay.
use advance, and not efficiently, but I'll take some screenshots and share them, but it won't be until I get back in the office tomorrow. Maybe I could do it from my laptop at home, but and see if that's what you saw. There's a pie chart that shows where they spent most of their time in the EMR, and then there's a whole graph that shows from the start of their shift to the end of their shift, basically what they were doing within Power Chart. And if that's it, I can share more information on it next time we meet. If it's not, we can keep digging.
Yeah, I mean, and I always think that that's a good session to even talk about, even if it's the existing tools that are out there, because it's so powerful to be able to look and see what you can do. So yeah, let me see if I can find some information, some additional stuff on what this new dashboard is, and I'll send that out, and then maybe we can talk about it in 2 months when we get back together and see what that looks like. Anything else? I figured I would just open it up like on the health conference if there's any sessions that people attended that they thought were useful or helpful, and then we can ask, people can go back out to the sessions and look at those. All right.
I mean, Brian, I can poll my team and see, I had 8 people there, and of course they were all off in different directions as to which ones they thought were the most informative, I guess.
Yeah, it always sort of depends on where you're at in your journey or what you're working to go and implement. So I'm always curious, what people thought were the good sessions. It's always frustrating when you have to choose between the 3 sessions that are all at the same time, and then you pick one and it's kind of a dud, and so you wish you had picked the other one. So I'm always looking for the good sessions so I can go back and rewatch those.
That is the problem of the conference, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I thought some of the ones I thought was best, one of them is that we are real focused on Cerner Form Suite and trying to move everything to electronic for our documentation for surgery and procedures. And so they had a really, really good session around that because we're working towards trying to get there. So I thought there was a really good session on that if anybody else is looking to move to that.
What was that called again, Tiffany? Electronic form?
Yeah, it's called Cerner Form Suite.
Cerner Form Suite. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right, yeah. Well, that kind of leads into the next area that I was talking about, and this is just kind of a general roundtable discussion for this month. So if there are topics that people want to bring up, new projects, but I thought, if there are new projects that you're kicking off or have underway, I thought those would be worthwhile. Maybe just talking about. I know, Tiffany, I think you mentioned that you were working and struggling maybe a little bit on your CareAware Connect project and getting that going. That I think would be helpful for others to hear about. But then if there are other projects that anybody is working on, I always think that's worthwhile to talk about a little bit and potentially get feedback from others who may have already been down that path. So I don't know if anybody wants to start us off and officially make it a roundtable.
It's Kim. So, I mean, here in Canada, we have, some different priorities, obviously. But we are doing what we're calling the provincial eHUB, which is an HIE for the Cerner, all of the Cerner domains within the province of Ontario. And so we're starting out with connecting just Cerner hospitals, and then the first outside connection is our long-term care centers, and we're connecting up point click care, which is the solution they use in most of those long-term care centers. So that's a fairly big initiative that we're doing in Ontario as part of our Cerner collaborative group. And so I don't know if that's something that folks are interested in. I know that HIEs have been in a lot of the US for a while, but this is kind of the first one in Canada.
I think that's interesting. I had just sort of a general topic that I figured I would throw out at some point, but just tools for sharing data within other organizations and how people have done with that. And so Hub, Provider Portal, Commonwealth, I think that's all important on how we share the data. But then I guess for this group, it's, does this help nursing? Does nursing find this useful, or is this more of a provider-centric set of tools? And like
it's a bit of both. It is a bit of both, but nurses will leverage it in particular for those transfers that come from long-term care, because now they come with some paper that whoever on the other end decided we're going to send along. So we are still early in this journey, so we haven't figured out all of the workflows per se and how you build. It's essentially the extra tab in it's an M page within Cerner, and how we build that into the workflow. Primarily on admission and discharge is where we see that it's going to have the most relevance, and that would be yes for physicians, but also for nursing.
Okay. And sorry, I'm asking the questions, but I know others will have questions as well. How much work does it take to keep up the hub in terms of maintenance when you have orders change, lab orders, those type of things typically involve a lot of maintenance. Are you anticipating a lot of maintenance to make sure that hub works?
I don't think we fully understand it yet. It's not as much about orders as it is about results, perhaps. And there is some maintenance, and there's somebody who has to monitor for failures of the data exchange and whatnot. We just did our maintenance training, so I can pull the team to see. Again, we're in our early stages of this, so I don't know if we fully understand it yet. I think where some of the maintenance comes in, it's more on the technical side, related to future connections. What are you connecting up next, and how does that fit into the workflows? So, for instance, we have patients who share across like dialysis, across oncology, from one organization to another, and so they work today out of two. The nurses work today out of two instances of Cerner. One is the London instance, and one is our instance. And so we haven't delved fully into how the workflow is going to be impacted, and whether or not we can get rid of them having to log into that second instance. We don't know the answer yet. We will, but we don't know it yet.
Okay. Well, that's a huge journey. And I mean, I think once you get that hub in place, that's such a huge benefit, not only for providers and the clinicians, but then also for the patients to have their record follow them as well. And, you know,
Exactly.
get rid of some of that paper along the way.
Yeah, for sure.
Has anybody else?
We build MedRec from a provider perspective. MedRec will get built into that of discharge MedRec as well. And medications coming in for BPMH and those kinds of things that will be built into this as well.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Kim. Does anybody else have any sort of a hub in place, or have you implemented Commonwealth or the provider portal, anything to help communicate with long-term care, outside providers or practices or other hospitals in your area? How about any other projects that folks are working on that they wanted to talk about, or questions, general questions or feedback that you may have?
This is Tiffany. We're currently working on the PSO project with Cerner, so the patient status order. I know a lot of people are already live with it, but it's something that we haven't done yet. And it's something that we continue to struggle with because of provider buy-in. So I don't know if anybody else has any tips or tricks on how they've done it, but that is our biggest concern, is really, we're taking that patient status order out of registration's hands, and, trying to make the provider actually update it truly on the patient status as the patient is there throughout their stay, and getting the providers to do that in a timely and correct manner has been very difficult. I don't know if anybody else is using that or has implemented that yet.
So we've used it, I think, since we've gone live, and you're kind of getting back into the depths where I wasn't really involved. But I do know, and I don't know if you would find this helpful. We have our transfer call center who, obviously takes outside transfers and bed assignments and things.
Mhm.
But one of their people every night at midnight or thereabouts, I believe, reviews every patient's PSO just as part of their standard work, and tries to get that fixed, calls like the on-call person if they notice something, or, gets it to the floor, depending on what
Mhm.
it is. And so that's just part of their standard work in the middle of the night. And Brian mentioned Tab and Laura will, they're over that area, so they could speak to it way more effectively than I could. But I do know that is something that takes place here nightly, just as an extra layer to make sure that those are all looking appropriate.
Okay, that's great to know. I know we've been trying to talk through who would do that, before midnight, look at the census, see how many heads and beds we have, how many PSO orders, and make sure they align. But that's great to know. To transfer center, we were trying to figure out who would be the right person to do that. Do you also have 24-hour support from case management?
I don't believe that we do. There may be something in the ED.
Okay.
I'm not certain on that, but I just know that that's become, because we kind of slow down in the transfer center a bit overnight. That has become part of their workflow over the years.
Okay. Yeah, we don't have 24-hour case management support. And so we were trying to figure out that piece too, just around making adjustments. And our providers do not know always what status is correct by payer, and they don't feel like they should have to know that.
And
They
it
feel like,
may be that we sort of identify those things for, you know, correction in the morning.
okay,
That may be the workflow and I'm just not aware of it.
nope,
I've never
that's totally
worked in that
fine.
area, but yeah.
Okay. Nope, I figured that's what we're going to have to do as well. So make those adjustments in the morning. So, okay. Well, that's great. I appreciate that.
The other site you might reach out to is CAMC. Tina Stamper, who couldn't be on the call today. They've been live with PSO for a long, long time. I think they presented on it a couple of times at the health conference as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Is not an easy conversation or topic there, especially when you're putting that back on the providers too.
Yes, exactly.
Any other questions that we wanted to talk about, or projects that we're working on? So one thing I wanted to pull the group on is, so by the end of the year, there's some cures requirements that all hospitals have to be up on to meet from a regulatory perspective. And in order to do that, you need to be on the pretty much the latest and greatest Cerner Millennium 2018 code. I think not even sure what dot release it is now, but anything I think past June is okay to be on. And then from that, there's some new code built into there that needs to be turned on and configured to meet the cures requirements. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody is well on that journey to being complete with that by December 31st. I know that gets a little outside of maybe this group's purview, but I know it's an important thing. From what I understand, the cures requirements don't change any workflows from a clinical perspective, but it does add in some additional things that need to be reported on to meet requirements by the end of the year.
Yeah, we're definitely meeting on it weekly, but like you said, it's not exactly I'm on it for awareness as opposed to activity.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just being set up so next year they put in the workflow changes or what's going to be coming, but yeah, fingers crossed that it doesn't change what you have to do. Great. All right. What else did we want to talk about? This is kind of your time to bring anything up. Tiffany, anything new on your CareAware Connect project? I know we mentioned that at the health conference.
Yeah, we're still in flight, trying to figure things out. We've been in a holding pattern for quite some time on it, trying to figure out the best way to move forward. Just in case anybody didn't hear, we are trying to move forward with CareAware Connect and capacity management together. We are using SpectraLinks, and we have about, we have about 3,000 devices. About 1,500 would be deployed to start. The issue that we're having is all over the place. We've been trying to go live for about 2.5 years, and we never have actually gotten live due to a wide range of issues. At first, we thought it was our Wi-Fi, but it had been certified by Cerner, and so it is not our Wi-Fi. We believe it's issues with the SpectraLink devices, but we're not 100% sure. So we got new LAN controllers that are being installed. We're trying to see if that'll help. Mainly it's the quality with the voice. That's really what we're struggling with the most. We do have a few issues here and there with errors and different things that pop up. We've been able to work through those. The other thing we're doing is we are the first client to be able to go live with the GE waveforms. So we do not use telemetry in-house. Our nurses are in charge of their own telemetry. So the telemetry waveforms are sent to them currently on their device, and they notify the physician if need be. And so that's a little bit different than anywhere else I've ever worked. We don't have like teletext or anything like that. So it has taken a long time and a lot of work with GE to get those waveforms working correctly and coming across to SpectraLink appropriately. So that is a big piece that we are still working on and validating.
Yeah. I haven't heard of anybody using SpectraLink devices. I'm sure people do use them. The TC51s are what I have primarily run across from organizations that are successful with CareAware Connect. Now, you have 3,000 devices, so that's not a acceptable answer there, I'm sure. But have you?
We've talked about it. Like, is it time to look at other devices? Should we looked at the Zebras as well, trying to decide if that would have been the better way to go. And we had, we decided on the SpectraLinks, but now I think we're kind of kicking ourselves as should we have gone with the Zebras instead?
Yeah.
So I'll be interested to stay in touch with you on that, Tiffany. I'm kicking off a Connect 3 project. We just kicked it off last week for Nicholas Children's, and they are using the SpectraLink devices. They have them rolled out now, not using Connect 3 because they were originally Connect 2 clients that stopped using Connect. So they're using just the SpectraLinks themselves. We're putting Connect 3 on top of it. But I had heard that maybe they are having problems with the existing SpectraLinks. But anyway, if we run into problems, I know who to reach out to.
Yeah,
I appreciate hearing this too. We're looking to start piloting maybe in 23. So
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let us know. It's an issue, I believe, with the version of that is on the SpectraLinks. They were saying that our LAN controllers only go up, I believe, to version 7, but the devices that we got or support the version 7 that is on the SpectraLinks. But the devices we got had version 8. So we're just trying to mitigate all this. And it's a lot of different moving parts between Cisco, SpectraLink, Cerner, and us trying to figure out what our true issue is and how we get it fixed. But yes, if you have any questions or problems, let us know, because we've been in the trenches on this for years now. So I feel like we've been able to solve most of our issues. The last one's really getting this voice quality issue fixed.
I was very nervous when our timeline was that we're implementing it right after we flip to RHO, and they're predicting that we'll be live before March. So knowing that you were saying how long it was taking you guys to get live with it, I'm really nervous about that timeline.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm hoping for the best for you. We just have run into roadblock after roadblock. So, but our organization's we are this way. We work slow. We that's just how we've always been, unfortunately. And so I do think some people can probably move this along much faster than we do. So yes, I will be interested to see. But yeah, please reach out if any questions or any problems along the way.
Great. Thanks for that, Tiffany.
Of course.
I was trying to stall a second because I know Holly Ellison at Concord said she could join at 9:30, and I know she had a couple things she wanted to talk about. She also might be a good one to ask about the PSO order process as well. So I was trying to look and see if there's anything else. I'm kind of looking at some of our future agenda items here. I think Tina Stamper, who talked at our last session, wanted to come back and work through workflow improvements for the start-stop of capturing infusion charges. And then Jenna, I think you had volunteered at some point, which you haven't worked out, to talk about blood administration with Bridge. And
yeah, we're still working through, waiting on the results from our process improvement project when Cerner came through.
Are you currently using Bridge Blood?
We are.
Can you help me with something? We've been trying to implement this as well for a while. And our big issue is we were actually implementing it during COVID, and our problem was that to scan on the device. So we were using the handhelds. We were going to scan the device for Bridge Blood, but most of the time our IDs were underneath our gowns, and we had so many patients that are in isolation. Do you know how you're doing that for isolation patients and scanning, like of my ID?
I do not. That's a really good question.
Okay, well,
It has not come past me. So.
Okay. I think a lot of people pull it out underneath their
Right.
gown and scan. We just during COVID, there was a lot of questions around that. And we still have obviously a lot of isolation patients outside of COVID as well. And so we were just trying to figure out the best way to be able to scan as we do that. So I just was wondering. So yeah, if you hear anything about that, please let me know. I appreciate it.
I don't know that we have to scan ourselves to give.
Okay.
I'm thinking about we don't do scan to log in, if that's.
Yes, we do.
Enter passwords.
Okay, that's probably
so that
why.
might be the difference. So it's not
Yes.
come up because we don't ever scan our badge. The only
Okay.
thing we've badge scanned for is glucometers.
Okay. That helps. And we've talked about whether we should just turn it off or take it away or just go to entering passwords to mitigate this. So, yep, absolutely.
Meanwhile, we all, over here, everybody wants to scan their badge. And then that's that great example of you fix one problem and you make another.
Exactly.
And then one other future item that I had is we were going to talk about how hospitals handle their workflow and script management around testing also. So we'll queue that up for a future meeting as well. All right. Hey, Holly, is that you?
Yeah.
Second.
It's me. I like to make an entrance.
There we go. Hey, thanks for joining. I was we were just kind of working through our proposed future agenda items. And I know you just joined, but sort of putting you on the spot, I know you had potentially want to talk about some of the class survey scores, and then also some other items, maybe potentially around education and things like that. Was there anything that you wanted to talk to this group about today?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Brian, and I apologize for being late. I think where we're at is we just went through a significant merger with two other hospitals, or acquisition rather, with two hospitals up north, and merged onto one Cerner instance. So that's been kind of our focus over the last year and a half. And now that we're through that, we did do a class survey with the two new organizations. We're part of the CLAS Arch Collaborative, and we have done a number of series at our original facility. I think we're on our third survey at this point, but it was our first time surveying the two newer organizations, because we wanted to get a baseline before and then be able to survey 6 months later, post them coming onto our instance. And what we found in the past is our survey scores initially, when we first went live with Cerner, were pretty low. Just having gone through that transition, we were able to move the needle with nursing quite a bit with their kind of a redo of their nursing documentation and cutting back on some of the documentation efforts that they had to do at the bedside. But our providers are, slowly moving up, but not as quickly as we would hope. I think this past survey also highlighted some of the just clinician burnout that is generally happening, I think, across the industry. So there were threads of that as well. But I think that providers are still continuing to struggle with general satisfaction of the system. So we're starting to look at how do we tackle some themes with that, as well as looking at a different approach to our education strategy, where we have more at the elbow or follow-up at like the 30, 60, 90-day, and even the first rounding for inpatients and kind of first office visit for outpatients. But I wasn't sure if this group had any success with bringing up their provider satisfaction scores or lights on data, any different approaches they've used for education that have been targeted with staff, and it can be for nursing as well, or any strategies that you use, because we are also using the learning journeys for Cerner and trying to leverage those as kind of an initial education, and then doing more hands-on at that second touch point, so the user can get, more of the point and click functionality initially, and then we come back in with more of a clinically focused education-based training. So that's kind of a little bit of history, but I just, any lessons learned that folks have had, or any strategies you put in place that have helped you be successful with that? I know that's a big question, but
Holly, I was going to say, from the provider standpoint, I don't know if you're talking about inpatient or your outpatient providers. So we have struggled significantly in our outpatient side for clinician satisfaction once we moved to Cerner. But our hospitalists and our inpatient providers are much more happy. I don't know if that's how you see it as well, or if it's different for you.
It's kind of across the board. Actually, we had, at one point, our ED providers had dipped really low, and they came back up this last survey. I would say higher dissatisfaction in the surgical providers on the inpatient space. It's kind of across the board for us, unfortunately. But to your point about ambulatory, I think we've continued to struggle in the practices just with general efficiency since moving to Cerner, and I think particularly in the roles that use both clinical and rev cycle, because it's just so much back and forth. So
yes.
Yeah, so
do you have how is your education like? So we have a nursing professional development team who does all of our inpatient nursing education, and then I have ownership of a physician liaison team who does all of our provider education. How does that divided up where you work?
So we have a team of 3 educators that are on my team that do all the systems training. So they do it kind of across the board. We have a SimLab nursing education team that does more of the clinically focused training, and they do some Cerner education. For example, if they're doing like a class about blood transfusions, they'll focus on the bridge, or if there's a med admin class, they'll focus on Alaris pump integration or something like that. But traditionally, we're owning all the Cerner education. So that's the other complexity at Concord is as we have so many different layers of education, it's becomes an ownership challenge at times when we have, preceptors on the units and we're trying to have them follow standard checklists and follow up, and there's, a little bit of push-pull around the ownership there. But with 3 people, I can't really get to everybody at the 30, 60, 90-day mark. It's more, it's more of a shared ownership at this point between the nurse educators, our team, the educators on my team, et cetera. So we have a team of 3 that does all of that training. We have a provider informatics team that I've talked to our CNIO about. I think we need to pull them more closely into the fold to work one-on-one with providers in a more targeted way. So that's an ongoing process, but not all of them have, some of them are only 1 day a week, so it becomes a staffing challenge. So do you have a provider liaison team that is fully dedicated? Are they providers doing the training, or are they trained to train providers?
They are trained to train providers. They're all nurses, and I have 6 of them. And they spend a lot of time in lights on looking at physicians. They watch a lot of the physicians' workflow. They'll go back on the auditor and watch their workflow and write up what they're doing wrong or what they could do to be more efficient. They write up these big reports, and then so they try to do that quarterly for each provider, which can be difficult. And we definitely don't always get them all done. And then try to meet with the providers. We do round in the clinics every single week and make sure we try to hit the providers there. But they do try to make sure they schedule that time with each individual provider and have a little one-on-one session just about their findings, things that they're seeing that they are doing, maybe either inefficiently or, and have those conversations with them about how they can improve their workflow.
Okay. And
which sometimes is welcomed and sometimes not.
Okay, I was going to ask that too. So it sounds like they do their kind of homework, look at lights on. We have Smart Auditor too to kind of be able to follow workflows and things like that. So it sounds like they make their notes, and then do they reach out and try to set up a time, or do they go to them and just kind of pop in as they're doing rounds, or because one of our other issues is getting these providers, kind of tracking them down and getting dedicated time for that. So is it kind of dependent on the group, or?
Yeah, it's definitely dependent on the group. Each of our physician liaisons own different practices, and so they will focus on those providers in those practices. And so they round there each week. So either one, they'll try to work with the practice manager if they can't get time with that provider to try to either have a lunch or whatever it may be to sit down with them and go through a few things. Or when they're there every single week, they'll try to pop in and give them little tips and tricks on different things that they're seeing about their workflow.
Okay.
Yeah, it kind of varies. Some providers are really open to it, and some of them really are resistant to it.
Okay. And do you have any way that you track like effectiveness of that in terms of like, okay, we've worked with these, or is that through Lights On that you kind of then do a post measure?
Yeah, we do it mainly through Lights On. I do have a few things I can send your way, Holly, just to show you what we kind of put together and package up to going to the provider, and then what we do and watch afterwards. So I'll send that to you.
That'd be great, because I think the other piece with Lights On is we do have folks that are trained on the team to look in there, but I think, some of the data is a little bit tough to use as, a benchmark. If it may not necessarily mean they don't know their way around the EMR. It might be a different workflow that they're using that is contributing to more time in the chart, or, et cetera. So interested in what data points you use too. So I'd appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brian did mention you guys were talking about the PSO, and not to rehash the conversation, but if anyone has any follow-up questions, I'm happy to be a resource, Brian, if you think there's anything I can help with.
Yeah, I think part of it was who. So we were talking, Tiffany was saying that they're working on the PSO order process and moving this from the registration and giving it to the provider. And so we were talking about who can double check that. And Jenna was also saying that they have the transfer center do that around midnight to kind of align and make sure we have the patients in the right area. But did you just want to give an overview of what you do at Concord?
Yeah, I think initially it was a lot of folks looking at it. So we had initially done spot checks within our team, and then we had care management helping with that because they looked at the bed board every day, and then the transfer center and the nursing soup. So we had kind of a combination based on who was here 24/7. But it does take a lot of care and feeding, especially initially, and those individuals really need to take ownership, whoever's monitoring it, to say, okay, this patient doesn't have one, reaching out to the provider and getting one. Because I think passing it off to the nurse on the floor was not successful for us, because then you're just kind of kicking the can a little bit. You know, someone's telling the nurse, and then the nurse has to call the provider. And I think we had a pretty steep learning curve with nursing to really understand the importance of it. I think they're in a much better place now, but they were kind of like, okay, it's not my problem. And so the ball gets bounced around a lot in terms of ownership. So I would suggest care management, nursing supervisors, and the transfer center as the three groups that really need to understand the importance of it, because I think they can help reinforce education as well.
Thank you. Yeah, we were trying to, our struggle is that our providers don't necessarily know what the correct status to put the patient in always. They feel like it depends on who they have, who's their insurance, who financially is doing this. So they don't feel like that's something they can keep up with or know. And so they feel like they need help with that. And so that is our big struggle. They don't feel like that. They're like, I don't really care what status they're in. I only care about taking care of the patient. That's kind of what they always tell us when we're like, yeah, we know, but we got to get paid. And so that's just our struggle. And so we're trying to get case management or care management to really be that, really work hand in hand with those providers to help guide them to the correct status.
Yeah, I think that's and having like your leadership and their leadership on board with that strategy is important, because I think we had a fair amount of pushback on IT that we should be owning it, and we had to really be, firm in the sand with that we can help support the process, but if you're calling an analyst on call, they're not going to know which PSO to use. That's something that you need to clinically understand, and then we can help you with how do you do it, or the way the rule's working, or something like that. But there was a fair amount of push and pull with that initially too. Do you have a utilization review team or a provider that does any time with your utilization review group?
Yes, we do.
Yep. Because we leveraged that individual as well, and made sure he was a champion for not only communicating to his peers, but being a resource for them. And we also used that individual to help do some one-on-one coaching and follow-up, because we had folks that didn't want to do it because they didn't understand it, and then folks that just refused to do it. So
yes,
he also helped with that. So I think it becomes an all hands on deck. But yeah, it's a journey. We're in a better spot now, but that was probably our number one. I can't tell you how many PSO calls I took from the baseball field. Off hours.
I bet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And sorry, I hate to go back to one other topic, but Holly, when we were in Kansas City, we looked, or I think you may have actually been able to get some information on that advanced dashboard. Were you able to find anything out about that? I think the rest of the group's really interested in that as well.
Yeah, I did. They weren't able to pull up our location, so John was going to come back and play around with it. I haven't been able to actually put hands on the keyboard with it, but it looked, it didn't blow me away initially. I haven't gone in to look at it further, but it looked like more of a CAN dashboard that had some of the metrics from the executive dashboard on it, and then a few other kind of standard metrics pulled in. So it looked like more of just a different view that they were putting out free to clients, but it is currently pushed out in your drop down in advance under the dashboard piece. There's a couple of different options that you can select, and it is available there. But one of the things we struggle with the executive dashboard is one of the metrics for the ED was not accurate, and we actually, several of our ED metrics were not accurate, and we didn't have the ability to change it. So it's not customizable, which has been a challenge for us. So, you know, Cerner has their definitions of the data, but I think those pre-canned dashboards you can't really edit or make your own. So it looked like it was helpful, but I don't know if something I would use on a day-to-day basis, but it is out there available to folks.
That's great, Holly. I'll go around. I'll go out there and play around with it a little bit as well, and I'll send some more information out to everybody so they know how to get to it. Also, appreciate it.
Yeah, if you find something else, Brian, you're much more savvy than I am, so let me know.
Yeah, yeah. I'll see what I can find to make sure everybody's aware of that. Well, we've got about 10 minutes left. I don't know if anybody else has anything specific they wanted to bring up or ask about. All right, well, I will let everybody go then. Thank you again for joining this month. We've got a couple things I'll look to find. Patty already sent out that presentation from Tina on the IPOC, so thank you. I'll get some information on the advanced dashboard. And then a couple other things. It sounds like we've connected groups here together. So Tiffany, I think you're going to send some stuff to Holly on how you have engaged from an education perspective. So if there's anything else that comes up, feel free to reach out to either Patty or me. We can always add it to the next agenda as well. So thanks, everybody. Have a good Wednesday, and we'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.